Good morning, guys. So, keto or a ketogenic diet. For me, keto, I really like keto. I did keto for about 10 years. I had to do I had to do a modified version of it, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But ketogenic diet basically means that your body's in a state of ketosis. That's primarily what we're trying to do when we're fasting as well. We're trying to take our body in a state of ketosis, but we're doing it for the times that we're fasting. As we're in a ketogenic diet, you're in ketosis all the time, even when you're eating, because there's no carbohydrates. You have to understand the properties here that come with proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So when it comes to protein and fats, we have what's called essential fatty acids and essential amino acids. The reason why they're termed essential is because you have to eat those foods. You've got to consume them. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. There's basically carbohydrate. Once we eat the carbohydrate and we digest it breaks down into glucose or blood sugars. All right, circulates around the system, stores in the liver, stores in the muscle as glycogen. But basically, it stores in the liver and breaks itself down. What we have to think about here is if the body goes through a state where there's no carbohydrates available, right? So you're not eating carbohydrates. So how's the body going to get some energy? The body will actually utilize fat. It will actually convert fat into glucose. All right, it's a process called gluconeogenesis. Gluco being glucose, neo meaning new, and genesis means to convert something one thing to something else. And this happens in the liver. And when this happens in the liver, a byproduct is ketones. There's a whole pile of other products as well as being produced, but ketones is basically being produced by the liver as a byproduct of breaking this fat down and the glucose which the muscles need. All right. Now, the benefit of ketosis or ketones are what the brain prefers sugar. The brain likes sugar. In fact, most of the sugar you eat is actually used up by the brain, maybe about 50 grams a day. And if there's no sugar available, it can get ketones. Ketones actually give the brain energy. Now, there's been a lot of research in the last few years into Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff like that, and the fact that they're actually calling Alzheimer's and stuff like that type 3 diabetes because there's a sugar relation. So having the brain using ketones all the time is very good for Alzheimer's prevention or any sort of brain deterioration prevention. Right. The ketogenic diet was actually originated for kids with epilepsy. They realized that if kids stopped taking sugar, they took less fits. The ratio here, so if you Google things like the ketogenic diet, you might get some mixed information. It originated with very, very high fat and very low protein, right? No carbohydrates at all. The modified version, the modern modified version of that is protein's high and fats are high. Now, again, whenever it comes to burning body fat, we've got three things that we can pretty much do. Remember, we burn fat when we're in a calorie deficit. Simple as that. There's no other way around it. So we have to be in a caloric deficit to burn fat. That's just the way it is. There's nothing else. You have to be in an energy demand place to burn body fat. Simple as that. If you're in energy surplus, you're not going to do it. So we've got three things that we can do. We can have calorie restriction where we actively count the calories. Here's my calorie target. I'm not going to go over this number. Now, theoretically, with that, we can eat whatever we want as long as you don't pass that number. From a weight loss point of view, now remember, we're taking into consideration protein and stuff like that. But from just a weight loss point of view, we could example of it. Calorie counting with calorie restriction, we're restricting calories. Specifically the calories, we're counting calories. Then we have time restriction, which is intermittent fasting. We are restricting the time in which we're eating. So theoretically, you're going to potentially, most of you fucking should be eating less food. I know some of you don't, right? But theoretically, the eating window's smaller, therefore you're bringing in less calories. Now, you're not counting calories because you're making the assumption that because my eating window, because I'm time restricted in where I can eat, I'm going to bring in less calories. I'm not counting them, but I can assume I'm bringing in less. Then we get dietary restriction. Dietary restriction is where we take one of those sort of macronutrients, carbs, fats, protein, and we eliminate it from the diet. For example, carbohydrates. We remove carbohydrates. Now, when we remove carbohydrates, we're removing what's predominantly the biggest part of your meal, because most people eat more carbs than anything else. So you're removing that. That's a way now to restrict calories, but we're doing it from removing a food source. Then there's the fact that you're more in a fat burning state and ketosis and all that kind of stuff. But from a calorie restriction point of view, that's the three sort of rules: calorie restriction, time restriction, dietary restriction. So we're going to try dietary restriction. Now, you could by all means do all three: calorie counting, time restriction, and keto, which would be pretty hardcore and pretty extreme. But some people need to do it because even like it just says in a ketogenic diet or even in an intermittent fasting sort of scenario, you can still overconsume too many calories, which means you're still going to get fat. So you can be doing intermittent fasting and keto and still get fat if you're overeating total calories throughout the space of the week. Does that make sense? So we want to try the keto. Now we're going to do a 2-week challenge here, and I've overlapped this, so it's going to run on to the fasting challenge as well. So we're going to do a week in keto. If you choose, you can then introduce the fasting into the keto as well. You can choose to just do the keto for 2 weeks. They will both work. Now, when I talked about a modified ketogenic diet, what I used to do was I did keto Monday to Friday, and I introduced carbs Saturday and Sunday. Now, there's pros and cons to this. Ketogenic diet is a phenomenal way of life. I really liked it. I worked really well off it. My strength went up. I felt really, really good. Now, from a performance point of view, theoretically, you shouldn't be as good in the gym because you don't have muscle readily stored with energy. Right? The muscle depleted of glycogen. Same when you're fasting. But it's very good for burning fat. If you're not really worried about performance or doing your best squats or bench press or runs, and you just want to burn fat, it's a great tool. For me, like I said, I actually get stronger on it. I really like it. I don't work well with carbs. Carbs just put me to sleep. I know they're part of everybody's diet, but I feel really fit, really strong, really sharp. You know, my mind's really switched on whenever I'm in ketosis, because remember, if you're in ketosis all the time. That means the brain's constantly getting ketones and not just the brain getting sugar based on when you eat, if that makes sense. All right. Remember, ketosis is what we're trying to achieve when we fast, but we're stopping that ketogenic state when we introduce food. For example, when we're fasting, most of you are all bringing in carbohydrates into that eating window. As soon as you bring in the carbohydrates, insulin level goes up. We're not in ketosis. If we're ketosis, we're eating all the time. We're eating at lunch, we're eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever times you want, and snacks. We're just not having carbohydrates. Therefore, we're staying in ketosis. We're staying in a ketogenic state. If that makes sense. All right. So that's basically what's happening from a fat burning point of view. You're constantly burning fat. You're turning your body into a fat burning machine. So everything it does is burning fat because it's the only energy source there. It won't discriminate if it's using the fat that you're eating or the fat that's in your body. But because we're in a caloric deficit, theoretically, because we've removed the carbohydrates, your body's just burning up fat all the time. Well, it's using the fat for energy from an aerobic point of view, or if it's burning fat and the gluconeogenesis, they convert that into glucose. From an anaerobic point of view, from when we're doing weights, it's just fat burn. You just melt fat. Now, again, like I said, the issue is here, once you introduce carbohydrates, same as with fasting, it's very easy then to gorge and overeat because you're very restricted. And we just get the taste for those carbs and you tend to want to overeat. So, when I talk about my modified version, where I would do Monday to Friday, no carbs, and then Saturday, Sunday I would introduce carbs. I could only do this after a 21-day period, so I have to do 21 days of pure ketosis. That's 3 weekends with no carbs before I can introduce the carbs. It meant that my body was then what we call fat adaptive, which means the body's really attuned and they're using fat for fuel. Then I become sort of hybrid, so I can switch on glycogen, I can switch on fat, I can switch on glucose, carbohydrates, fat, so I can basically turn my body from one to the other very, very rapidly. And I would know this because in the Monday evening, just become Monday evening, I would taste the ketones. You can taste them, they're very metallic, you taste in your mouth. So I knew I was going to make ketosis very, very quick. Where if you just do Monday to Friday, add carbs Monday to Friday, it might take about Thursday or Friday before you actually start to get those ketones producing really effectively, especially for ladies who are going to do menopause, where that insulin resistance and that, your fat accumulation, specifically around the midsection, that's insulin resistance. So it means that the cell's not working well with glucose as it is. So they tell your body, use glucose, use fat, use glucose, use fat. It's not really great. You normally go a wee bit hypo sometimes. The body wants carbs and the carbs are going away. The body has carbs and the carbs are going away. So it's not really great. So if you're going to do this, even the 14-day period it should be okay for you people who have been doing fasting, because fasting again mimics that on-off switch, that sort of hybrid switch, fat burning, glucose kind of thing. So 21-day period should be enough for you then to introduce a lifestyle change of keto Monday to Friday, introducing some carbs Saturday, Sunday. But again, this still boils down to, it does not give you a free ticket to fucking gorge at the weekend and eat like an animal. You still have to, over the point of the week, accumulative week, be in some sort of caloric deficit. So for some people, it is good to actually track the calories, even though It's supposed to be a way to not track calories but still be in a calorie deficit, if that makes sense. So it's about you finding out what works for me. So again, for me, Monday to Friday, if Izzy didn't make dinner, if I made my own dinner, I'd have no carbs during the week at all. My only carb meal now is dinner. So for example, we had chicken, sweet and sour chicken last night with some rice. Right? So I have carbs for my dinner. If it was my choice, I would have no carbs Monday, Friday at all. I work really well. I get super lean weight. My energy levels is through the roof. Like I said, my cognitive function is very, very sharp on it as well too. So it's quite good for that. So we're going to start this off next Monday. If you want to chat a wee bit more, give me a shout when you're in, and try and understand exactly what's happening before we do this. Like I said, for me, it's a great lifestyle choice, but I'm very restrictive and very sort of disciplined, and I'm very consistent in what I eat. You do be very limited to food choices and food sort of what am I going to eat today. It's normally chicken, fish, eggs, vegetables. We have to limit fruit on this because again it's giving that insulin spike. But lots of vegetables, lots of salad. It's great for people who love cheese, ham, eggs, and all that kind of stuff. And again, you feel very full up on it because again it's all that protein, it's all that essential fats. It's great for getting your protein in. There's no bother getting your protein in keto because you can have your breakfast in the morning. You don't have to fast. Breakfast at 8 o'clock, lunch, dinner, 2 snacks. It's all protein based meals, so it's very good for getting your protein up, very good for getting lean mixes. So if that all protein coming up, you get the metabolism really fired up. Alright. Any more questions, just give me a shout. And if you're interested in doing it, send me a thumbs up on this video. Just put a wee thumbs up so we know how many people we've got into the keto challenge. Like I said, I love it, but there's pros and cons for everybody. Alright.